Hey everyone, it is Eric with Rockin H TV and the Diecast Lab. Thank you for coming in today and watching. Today what we're going to cover is I went ahead and I bought a Greenlight grain truck to compare with my own products. Then I thought, I have time, let's take the box off, put it on a DCP, and then what do you do with the leftover truck? Well, I'm going to show you. So I'll show you exactly how I did everything so you can understand. If you want to do it yourself, you can. This is not a step-by-step tutorial, more of an overview. So if you want a step-by-step tutorial, go to diecastlab.com and you're in. Okay, let's just take a quick look here. All right, now you got to look at my ceiling. Whoop. Maybe we'll get you. There we go. Okay, and my gimbal leg. Huh, isn't that fun? All right, so here's what we got, guys. This is the Greenlight box. This is let me show you. I got to get one more of these. So this is how this cab started out. And I originally bought these to make a harvest crew out of them. And what happened last night was I was kind of in between things, and I'm like, I wonder if I could mount that on that box on a DCP truck. And lo and behold, this is the only donor I had on hand. So this cab started out as this cab. All right. So you'll notice the first thing we had to do was stretch that monkey out because it's way short. So we had to add about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch of frame in there just to make it all work. So the first thing you got to do is you got to stretch out your cab. And, you know, for kicks, I didn't measure this before, but we'll give you a rough guesstimate now. Your frame is going to have to be basically from the back of the cab to the end of the frame about 4 inches, 4 1/16 maybe. It really depends on, so 4 inches is going to get you more or less there, 4 1/8. But what you will have to consider is if you're going to have your exhaust coming up the back of the cab or not. So you might have to wiggle in another 1/8 of an inch for exhaust. So I made this a weed burner instead because I thought, that's simple. It is just simple. That, and I would tell you, I put this together really fast, and I didn't really take my time on it because you'll see why. Okay. So number one, you got to stretch out your frame, and then you got to remove some diecast here where your fifth wheel plate was. I just took my Dremel, popped off the fifth wheel, and ground off the studs, and then ground off a little more to make it flatter from here to here, because normally this area right here is raised about a 1/16 or 1 millimeter above the rest of the frame. And what I found when I did this was, okay, well, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So I had to come in here and grind more of this down. Okay. All right. So this one, I was curious what would happen if I took the mud flaps out. So on Kenworth trucks, the mud flaps just have a little stud that goes into the diecast. Okay, so see that little square peg right there? That little square peg pushes into the diecast, and I wondered, well, what would happen if I just drilled through that, which I did. And you can see here how that happened. Okay, so I took a 1/16 inch bit first, and then I took the next size up and went through it again to make a spot for the pin to go through, because what I really wanted to do was reuse these plastic hangers on the bed instead of having to manufacture something. Again, I was going for speed and simplicity. Out of the two projects I'm going to review today, this one's much more complicated than the other one. The other one was a breeze. Gosh, I got that done this morning. Anyway, I used a leftover DCP tart rod as the pin because it's slightly smaller in diameter than 1/16 inch rod. The one thing I noticed by drilling through the diecast on the cab or on the frame, then reusing these holes right here, is I had to be kind of particular because that frame the bed wouldn't set level. So I had to give myself ample wiggle room in here so the bed would touch the frame. That's probably a terrible explanation, but what you'll find out if you do this yourself, if you do it the same way I did it. So drill a hole through there, used a smaller rod, so I had plenty of wiggle room. It's kind of sloppy on there, but it works. And then reuse the holes, or reuse these plastic hangers on the bed. So that's how I attached it to the back. At the front of the frame, I just drilled a 3/64 hole through there and used a piece of piano wire as the pin and bent it over. It's not glamorous. I tried glue with a small piece of plastic rod and it didn't work. So I just used a piece of piano wire. You can see here, I just bent it over. This is not ideal by any stretch, okay? It's not ideal. And then you got that sloppy glue left over there. So that is how I attached the front hoist to the, and then also the back pivot point on the frame. Then I had, okay, so somebody asked, what did I use for the stretching material? This is brass rod, or excuse me, brass square tubing. It's 1/4 inch, and all I did was I took 1/4 inch square tube. This particular piece is not, but I took 1/4 inch square tube, cut it in half, and then used my belt sander to sand it down a little bit, and that's what I used for C-channel. Okay, so I've been doing this for a long time. I've just been cutting square tube in half and been using that successfully. So that's all that is 1/4 inch C-channel that I made here at the house. Huh, that's loose, I'll be darned. One thing I did notice is this hoist right here is wider than the C-channel, so you can't really see it well, but I took my belt sander and I sanded, there's a little ridge right here that extends out on both sides of the hoist. I went ahead and sanded that down, and then you have a metal pin in there, which I also had to sand down a little bit, and now it goes between the frame rails. It does hang up a little bit, so don't pull it up fast. And that's how I did that. So it took a little bit of fabbing to get this figured out. It's not awesome, but it does work. The method I'm describing does work on a T660. I cannot tell you if it would work on a Peterbilt the same way or other models of truck. I don't know why it wouldn't, but then again, I haven't done it yet. If you were to replicate this idea on a Peterbilt, you would notice that you have 2 rivets holding your rear mud flaps on. So I don't know if it would work as well on a Pete as it does on a K-Dub. So there you go. Huh. Now this is really weird. Why is my gimbal doing this all of a sudden? Alright, come here, gimbal. I guess I should have used my other holder. Okay. So I think that covers everything on this truck. I ended up using some aluminum tube, some pipe for the exhaust, and like I said, I made it a weed burner. And there you go. Could one sand the inside of the frame rails? Absolutely you could. And I've actually done that before when I've used my homemade. There, now we're set. So, yes, Chad, you said, can you sand the inside of the frame? On my own hoist and everything, if I've used my handmade brass or any kind of brass and the hoist doesn't quite fit between those, I'll take a file, and wherever it's touching, I'll just go ahead and file the inside of the frame rails. And it works just fine. Works perfectly. No worries. All right. If you have questions on the Peterbilt, or excuse me, the Kenworth, let me know. Like I said, this is not a glamorous build, and I think if I were doing one for a client or somebody, a customer, I would take way more time and make sure this was a lot neater and cleaner than it is. But for this purpose, like I said, last night I was kind of bored here in the lab. I was in between things. This thing here was waiting for it to dry, and a couple of other things were like in limbo. So I thought, all right, we're going to cut some stuff up. Let's go to work. And now here's what we have. If I were doing this again, I would look for a truck where I didn't have to cut the frame, because I love it when I don't have to cut a frame. That is the awesomest thing on the planet. And if anyone is interested in buying this, I got like 35 in the cab, 15 in a bed, and some labor. I'm not keeping this. It's going to go on eBay. Okay, so I took this bed off of my Greenlight, which meant I had a Greenlight cab and frame to deal with. So what I did was I went over to my wall over here. Let me show you my wall. There's my wall of goodies. So I went to my wall of goodies and I thought, what can I put on there that will be easy? And I found this bed, and this made it super, super, super easy. Okay, if you're looking for a really simple build, this Greenlight is an easy one to do. Okay, what did I do? One, after you take your grain bed off of the Greenlight truck, you're going to have these parts right here you have to take off before the bed would go on. So you have to take your fuel tanks off, this battery box, this part here, that thing, and your mud flaps. Oh, and this thing. These are all plastic pieces that just busted right off of the frame. Super easy. Next, you're going to have to cut some die-cast out of your frame. You can see that I didn't measure correctly. But what happened? But I took out this much die-cast. This is about 1/4 inch. And you'll notice my bandsaw did not cut straight at all, which meant I had to sand it, which is why I kind of came up short. You can see about 1/4 inch of die-cast came out of that frame. And then, okay, so you cut your frame. Then you're going to need some shims, which you can kind of see right underneath here in that gap. You can see some shims in there. I'm going to move over here where the sun's not so bright. So I used just enough plastic shims to, one, join the truck, join the front end of the frame and the back end of the frame. So I joined them with plastic shims. Then I had to use a few more to raise the bed level so I got enough clearance and the gap that I wanted over the rear axles. Okay? So there are shims that run from here to here just to join the two pieces of frame. And then there's two shims that go from right here all the way to the back to level this on the frame and then add overall strength. Now if you're a purist, there are guys that get really emotional about stretching a frame the way I did. There are some guys that even on trucks like this, they'll say, if you're not using rectangular tubing to join your frame, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so I did it wrong, sue me. But I'm telling you, if you're brand new at customizing, give yourself an easy win and just use these shims, the plastic and the bed itself, to join your two pieces together, turn it upside down and never pick it back up again, and look at the bottom. Look at that. See? It's a perfect stretch. Not a perfect stretch. Perfect stretch. Not a perfect stretch. Okay. So never turn it upside down and don't tell your friends what you did. Easy money. You win. So that's really all I did with this. It was that simple. I cut the frame in half. I cut a 1/4 inch out. Piece of plastic to join this and this. 2 pieces of plastic to level to go the whole length and to set the bed on. I dry fit everything to eyeball it to make sure that it was the proper distance and the proper height. Painted the bed, glued it on, and here we are. That's it. That is how, this took me about 30 minutes to do right here. And that includes painting because I painted the bed with some really fast drying paint, stuck it in front of my heater, and then done. That was it. And Ralph, he says, let me see, Ralph, can I pronounce your last? Concilio? Concilio? Yes, this thing is for sale as well because this was experimental and so is the grain truck experimental, so they are both for sale. So there you go, guys. How it's made. 2 trucks, DCP, Greenlight, and Rockin H right here. That's how you did it. And don't forget, you can keep all these parts as you wish and reuse them, so put some of this stuff in your parts bin if you like. This came off of the Greenlight to put the service bed on. This is a piece that came off of the grain bed, which I didn't reuse because it was stupid. And that's it.